Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Leader Story Lounge. So before we get started and have our guest for today, let me just give you a quick background about Leader Story Lounge. So me and my co-founder, Dr. Rupinder Kumar, so we have this habit of sharing stories and we've been writing on LinkedIn for quite some time. And this is how we met. So we started reading each other's stories, and over the period of time, we had a lot of learnings from each other, and that is when this thought of the leader story launch was born. So we thought that why don't we bring about stories from the leaders and take it to people for them also to learn from their interesting journeys. So here I am along with my co-host Dr. Rupinder Kaur on another episode of Leader Story Launch. So I'll welcome Dr. Rupinder Kaur and our guest for today, Mr. Samrendra Kumar.
Thank you, Akhil. Thank you for doing this for us and introducing everyone to what Story Lounge is all about, what is the concept, and what is the thought behind it. It's a short, crisp, conversation with some of the very astute leaders that we have, in the civil and the military today. But before I do that, let me just say one line about myself. My name is Rupinder, and I'm a leadership coach. I'm an educator, a researcher, and a very proud Army veteran. Yeah, this is something that I keep close to my heart even after 15 years of leaving the forge. And I'm so very glad to welcome somebody who's from my alma mater, who's been an inspiring leader for the last 10 odd years that I've known him. So welcome, Colonel Sam. That's how I will call you. Well, his full name is Colonel Samrendra Mohan Kumar, for all of you who don't know him, but we very fondly call him Colonel Sam. Colonel Sam is an alumnus of IIM Calcutta, King's College London, Joint Services Command and Staff College UK. He's an experienced security and risk professional with a demonstrated history of building and driving business to profitability and sustained growth. He's the founder CEO of Midcat Advisory, a leading Asian risk consultancy, a very big name in this industry, I must say, and currently its managing director. Sam leads the development of products to achieve its mission, which is de-risk client business and protect vital assets. And he's been pivotal to Midcat's regional and global ambitions. A distinguished veteran, a winner of Sword of Honor and President's Gold Medal at Indian Military Academy. For those of you who are veterans would understand the importance and the prestige of this distinguished career service. Colonel S.M. Kumar has held distinguished leadership, staff, instructional, technical, and multinational assignments, commanded a combat unit, and has been awarded for distinguished services. He's an acknowledged thought leader, a speaker, and an author. Appears on prime time TV, radio, security, and leadership fundraise. I can go on and on and on, but I think I'll have to just put a full stop there with bringing you on board in this conversation, Colonel Sam. A very warm welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Rupinder, and thank you, Akhil. Such a pleasure to be on Leader Story Lounge.
Welcome,
Thank you
sir.
so much. Thank you so much once again, sir, for sparing this time for us. So, without taking any further time, of the audience, I'm going to straight away jump into the first question for the day for you. It's more of a conversational journey than actually a question. You've been in the army for almost 2 decades, and then of course set a grand entrepreneurial journey and set up a huge business today, which has its own standing not only in the national but in an international arena. How easy or difficult, if I may say, was the transition? And what are some of the things that you learned from Forge which helped you in your transition journey?
So, Rupinder and Akhilesh, Akhil, sorry, let me ask you a question. Are you aware which college or academy or institution has produced maximum number of CEOs? Any idea?
Maximum number of CEOs.
Yes.
Indian
You want to
Military
take a
Academy.
Globally.
Globally.
Is it the military?
Yes, it's West Point, West Point, the US Military Academy. So in the US, almost a quarter of Fortune companies have veterans in the top leadership. and it's a trend which is catching up in India. So I often get asked this question: do the veterans ever need to become successful entrepreneurs and business leaders? I think the simple answer is yes. We absolutely have what it takes to be an entrepreneur and a successful business leader. We just need to focus on three things. We need to understand market, we need to understand money, and we just need to understand the sheer pace of technology development, which is mind-boggling. And I'm very fond of the statistics that from telephone taking 75 years to reach 50 million users, we are now in an era of Pokemon Go and other apps which take 10 days to reach 50 million or 100 million users. So let me go briefly to my story, because I think that is what you would be interested in. Rupinder, if that is fine with you, very briefly.
Absolutely, sir. Please.
I will pick it up very early in my first day at NDA, and I came from Bihar, and Bihar was the most laggard among Bimaru states then, and I had started studying English only in class 6th. So when I went there, I found these people from modern schools, Springdale's, Stephens, Mayo College and all, and children with very privileged upbringings and sons of generals, admirals, marshals. And I just was very nervous. I just thought, I'm just not up to it. And then something very funny happened. They took us to barber shop and they just gave us a very, crew cut. And then they also took off our jeans and polo tees and then put us in shorts. So now everybody looked alike. So on a day one, they had started the level playing field. So now I felt comfortable. Now everybody is on the starting block together. And then 4 years down the line, when I commanded the passing out parade and you've given a very, very generous introduction, I think the overwhelming feeling was that it didn't matter where you started from. I think what you accomplished and if you worked hard and what you accomplished and achieved, that's what all mattered in life. So I had a good career in Army, from Sword of Honor and President's Gold Medal, went on to command a combat unit. I hung uniform on the last day of command and then truly enjoyed my life and time in the Army. I learned some valuable life lessons in Army, and then that has actually served me well in the corporate as well as entrepreneurial innings. And I think I can go on and on: leadership, goal orientation, planning, decision making, respect for procedures, importance of staying fit and healthy, teamwork, empathy, duty, honor, integrity, courage, loyalty, importance of organizational culture, and I can go on and on, like I said. But I just want to amplify 2-3 aspects, if that's fine with you. I'll just take 2-3 of the key learnings.
Sure.
The first one is, the first principle of war: selection and maintenance of aim. So that because we are living in a world with so much of information, with so much of distraction, it is easy to get defocused and lost. So in Army, there was great emphasis on selection and maintenance of aim, which is the first principle of war. That is, you select the correct objective, you plan meticulously, and then you execute flawlessly. Also, the importance of reacting quickly, adequately, and effectively to any of the changed circumstances. So if you look at the Army organizational structure, the mission orientation and agility is built into it. For example, if you look at a combat team or a combat group, those who are from armed forces, they will understand. So you have a regimental or a battalion headquarter, and then you can keep adding to that. You can add some batteries of artillery, you can add guns to that, you can add engineer regiments to that. So you can add supply element, and once the mission is accomplished, the fighter plane comes in, does its job, goes away, the helicopter comes in, goes away, guns can fire at one place and they can be reallocated to somebody else. So the whole mission, the whole organization is very mission oriented and very, very agile. So, and agility is a much talked about quality in the VUCA world of today. So in corporate world also you will hear. So when I was thinking back, I looked at it, look, our organizational structure was always very, very agile. We are also in armed forces, if you look at, very adaptable and quick learners. So what happens is every 2 to 3 years, you get a different posting, a different kind of role and completely different role. And then you have to you get 4 days of handing taking over, and thereafter you have to just run with it. So in a rapidly changing world, and you are a leadership coach, and both of you come and you're in shaping lives. So you would realize that learning agility is a very, very important characteristic today. Army also, sets very, very high benchmarks in leadership. Whether it was young Captain Vikram Batra standing on top of, hill and then said, "Ye dil mange more," or Major D.P. Singh, who defied death and turned adversity into opportunity. And today, with about still 100 bullets in his body and, being amputee, he still jumps from does skydiving and other things and runs marathon. Or it was Lance Naik Hanmantappa, who was buried in 30 feet of snow at minus 45, and his commanding officer refused to give up because he was brought in the Chetwodian motto, the safety, honor, and welfare of the country first, and then the honor, welfare, and comfort of the men you command next, and then your men and women now. So there were other learnings from the army, the importance of good leadership, and not only leadership. Army also teaches you good followership, the importance of meticulous planning, that attention to details, the teamwork, being on time, never taking unscheduled time off from duty without any this thing, camaraderie, spirit de corps. So these were to prove very, very useful in my entrepreneurial career. If you allow me, I can talk a little bit about military planning, and I will not take a operational example, because war examples you keep seeing, and these days also Pangong So and every other areas are in news. So I will take a very, very mundane thing like dinner. Even a thing like dinner is planned to the last T. So invitations go out 2 months in advance or a month in advance. Everything is handwritten, my dear so and so, and then it is signed, yours sincerely. Whether you acknowledge it, whether you accept or you decline, the acknowledgement is with the same politeness. Who comes in at what time, who comes in at 7:28 and who comes in at 7:29, and who is received how, who is received with wife and who is received without wife, and who is received in lawn and who is received in portico, how many drinks you have and how many in the lawn and how many inside, which course is candlelit and which one without candles, and how many courses of dinner, who is toasted and how, when is national anthem played, what happens after dinner, and how guests are seen off, and then the post dinner activities. And there is it all flows meticulously, and there is a whole lot of contingency planning. If the power switches off, and if the generator also kind of backs off, so what do you do? So there are multiple layers of contingency planning, and I could go on and on, but I think everything proceeds very smoothly. Rupinder, you would agree, there is no hurrying or scurrying, and so much has been talked about Army's operational planning. I think the big answer to why military is always able to excel and deliver, I think it comes in the correct grooming, correct selection of people, and correct grooming, and then thereafter continuous learning. So Army teaches you to hire correct, train well, plan meticulously, and execute flawlessly. And if you ask Dr. Rupinder, she can go on and on SSB, how people are selected. So the importance of hiring correct, this meticulous planning, continuous training, learning, development of colleagues, this has served me well in corporate as well as entrepreneurial innings. So I will just conclude this part with a quote from Kaufman, and if you allow me to read. Military veterans are committed to success, driven by passion. Military veterans are committed to excellence, driven by passion and focused on success. The same values that led to your success in military are critical to running a business as well. So I think I'll leave it at that.
Thank you for such, a horizontal and vertical view of the leadership principles that Forge espouses, sir. I mean, I couldn't have said it better the way you said it, and completely, aligned with whatever you said. One of my favorite quotes, which I still quote in my leadership trainings and coaches, is what you spoke eloquently about is, the more you train in peace, the less you bleed in war. Yeah. And such a heavy focus on planning and training is basically how critical it is for us to win those wars when they come to us unannounced. And so brilliantly said, sir. Thank you so much for sharing that and giving everyone out there who is not from Forge, giving a very holistic perspective of what Forge stands for and how does it really build its leaders from grounds up. I also would leave with the audience and everyone else, before I hand it over to Akhil, with the thought that we believe in Forge, and I think everyone else in the corporate world should also believe that everyone who joins Forge, whether it's a soldier or a young captain, is a leader in themselves, and we groom them like that. So that, for example, if your superior is not there, you are trained to take on their role, whether in peace or war. So, in that sense, you are a leader the day you join, and Army prepares you like that. So, over to you, Akhil, for the next round of questions from Sir.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rupinder. Thank you so much, sir, for sharing that perspective. In fact, before I ask my question, I'll definitely want to share this that when I was growing up as a child, I always wanted to join the Indian Army. And I've already told this to Dr. Rupinder that when I used to come back from school, I actually used to dress up in the army uniform, go shooting around the house, and only after I was done for like a couple of hours, my mother used to say me that, okay, if you're tired and hungry now, let's have our lunch. So that is how passionate I was. I couldn't join the army. I ended up being a chartered accountant. But thank you for sharing your story. Apart from everything else that you shared, one of the key learnings for me was you kind of reiterated the fact that change is the only constant in this world. Yeah. And that is what I definitely take back. My question to you is, leadership is a long journey. So if you could help us understand the highs and lows of your journey, that will be wonderful.
I think some of it has been covered earlier, right, coming from a humble background and then making it right to the front rank in the military. But the more important, I think, the more touching moment was when I was commanding the parade. My parents, my mother, all of 8th class pass. She was sitting in the front row on the first seat, and my father on the second, and then we had a whole lot of generals sitting. And even more touching was when I went for the pipping ceremony, when parents actually put stars on your shoulder, the single star of a second lieutenant, and then which when I got that, I felt I was the most powerful person on this planet. The person next to me was a gentleman called Second Lieutenant Ravinder Singh Kataria, later Colonel Kataria, Sena Medal. And his father was a JCO, and he put a star on his shoulder and saluted him. And that's something etched in my memory. So what was happening on the sides was probably appealing to me, much more. And then that has left a lasting impression. So coming from a humble background and doing okay, representing India in staff college in UK, people from 93 countries. So again, a very proud moment, being trusted by the unit as a company commander to lead in operations. So that again is a very, very great moment of pride. And then commanding my own unit, running many operations, not only for myself, but for, a dozen and a half other people in the unit, and hanging uniform on the last day of command in a blaze of glory. So I hung uniform on the last day. What happens is I commanded the same battalion in which I was commissioned. So 21 years in the same battalion. It was like family. I knew everybody's by name and number. And you are put in an open jeep, and they they tie a rope to that, and they pull you literally. And they, for about a kilometer, they pull you till the gate of the unit. And so it's a very, very touching moment. And you could just thank you for making me. Yeah, there are lows also. Losing a colleague in combat or otherwise is always immensely distressing, and it always gets you to introspect. Could we have done better? It is very heartbreaking as a leader when you have to break the news to family, and military never delegates this. There's a responsibility which is to be discharged by the senior most person, and sometimes you are disappointed in your ability not to improve a colleague. If you want to just bring them up to a certain standard and they're not making it, and military, we take leadership very, very seriously. Entrepreneurship involves high and lows in equal measure. I think 93% is the failure rate in entrepreneurship, so 7%. So we are the lucky ones. And I will cover some parts of entrepreneurship if you allow me, if you ask me some question on that. So I think early days were tough. COVID days were very tough. Again, moment of truth, both. But it's immensely satisfying now. We've gone to about 25 countries. We grew through COVID. We grew 20%. We gave increments to people during COVID. So all that has been extremely satisfying. Working in some of the geographies like Iraq, Myanmar, in Naxal affected areas in India, working in Nepal post the earthquake, some parts of Bangladesh. So it's been pretty tough and challenging, and sometimes involved considerable risks to life. But we are committed to keeping our colleagues and our customers safe. Uh, in one of the trainings, one of our women safety trainings, one of our over enthusiastic colleagues actually broke the nose of a trainee. So sometimes things can go wrong. We have seen in when we were in Iraq, we have seen actually ISIS attack. I saw 26/11 at very close quarters, and many other incidents in corporate. So being through it itself always an experience. Sometimes as service provider, you get pushed too hard by customers, and once or twice probably you feel you've been pushed hard unfairly, and particularly by companies which say that we are the best companies in the world, we are the most admired companies. But by and large, I think the customers have been awesome. We work with 65 of the world's top 100 companies, and operating in this part of the world, and I think that most of them have been very, very wonderful to us to work with. And the profession of consulting is demanding. A word of appreciation from the customer is always great. So we've been very, very fortunate to receive overwhelming trust and confidence. If you go back to army, I think the stories never end. Being invited to the military academy for Golden and Diamond Jubilee as a former Sword of Honor, being invited to All India Radio to narrate your story as a former soldier, being a motivational speaker, you get invited if you can make a difference to people's lives or mentoring young colleagues. So all these are immensely satisfying. Our entrepreneurial story actually has been covered in a book. And it's been, I think, pretty well covered. The author has done a great job, and so there is much to feel happy about in life, and there has been much learning even in rough moments. So I will stop there.
So I think, sir, you've had a lot of learnings over your journey, and I think all of those learnings is what our audience at Leader Story Lounge is also getting to learn from today. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. I'll pass it on to Dr. Rupinder for the next question.
Yeah, I can relate to Sam sir what you're saying, because having spent a chunk of your career life, personal life, professional life in Forge, the stories may just not be sufficient for 30 minutes. It may just take days, not only hours but days maybe to recount. And we would love to hear some of those stories. But being mindful of the time, I'm going to steer this conversation a little more from the military to the corporate world and the business context that you've been very successfully running in the last few years. And it is so heartening to see. I remember when I was in Securitas before Accenture and EY, we used to take great pride in a lot of women who were a part of the security industry, especially under your, in your firm, and how you used to propagate and inculcate the importance of having a diverse employee group. So with respect to that, how do you really foster a culture of diversity and learning within your firm, and what are your views around that? Would you be happy to hear that?
So I think diversity adds strength and resilience to the organization. We are diverse and inclusive, and I think we could do much better. And then I would say that we are diverse because we are meritocratic, and we have always been so. When we were first 20 people, then we had Sheikh and Rizwan, we had Sandra and Abbas Sebastian, we had Malcolm Cooper. Out of 20, we didn't realize it, but we had people from probably 4 or 5 religions, 10 states, and few women colleagues. And so currently, very happy to tell you that in 2 of our business units, we have more than 75% women. So overall on roll, we are inching closer to 50% women. And we also have colleagues across 4 countries. And yet, I think at leadership level, we are still 2 Indian, we are 2 male, and we are 2 military. So I tell potential aspirants to join our company that if you are a non-Indian, non-military female candidate, you have a great chance of getting hired and making it to the leadership level. Attracting talent early was difficult, but not any longer. And sometimes we have problem in getting appropriate tech talent. And we do also treat our interns very well, and we get a fair amount of women colleagues, women interns, and then many of them we hire as colleagues. And so continual learning is very, very important part of what we do. And I
That's
think learning, it is on-job learning from colleagues, customers, and partners. So that's, we also encourage our colleagues to take formal certifications, to attend seminars, webinars, workshops. When we are knowledge partners to large number of events, I think we split between all of us come on the stage. We take some of our young colleagues also. Within the organization, we invite external speakers, including people people we compete with. And we also learn from a lot from each other. So being a very meritocratic organization, and most of my young colleagues have got probably 2 post-graduations, one from India and one from overseas. And whenever we do any training, paid or otherwise, for outside, we also encourage all our young colleagues, including embedded colleagues who are working for other organizations. So and managers have very specific mandates to upskill their colleagues and to digitally transform their business units, so that over a period of time we become a very kind of data heavy and algorithmically inspired and a digitally transformed company. So that's in a nutshell what we do on diversity and learning.
Thank you, sir. And I never had any doubts, I think, of your being a very progressive and forward-looking organization. I think the question was largely stemming from the fact that security profession, and I call it security, although your firm has a much larger umbrella. It's working under a much bigger bucket of a business portfolio, but we've historically we've not seen a lot of women in this domain. But if I see the last 5 to 10 years, I think the speed is picking up, and I think it's just a matter of time that this profession also sees an equal measure of the gender balance. And if we have leaders like you at the top, I think the road is just going to get shorter and shorter, and we're going to reach the milestones faster. Great. Back to you, Akhil, for the quick question, the last question of the day.
Thank you, Rupinder. So, sir, my question is around your entrepreneurship journey. So what I've observed is that entrepreneurship is now a very glamorous world, right? Despite knowing the fact that only 7% people make it through and be what we call as successful entrepreneurs. So I have 2 questions. One is, how would you describe your entrepreneurial journey so far? And what would be your message to the aspiring entrepreneurs of the future?
I think the transition can be dramatic. After doing so well in the armed forces, when I came out, I didn't have a job. I used to tell people I'm good, and still I wouldn't get a job, and they used to agree that I was good. So I learned the hard way that there is no relationship between being good and having a job, which is basically a market determined function of demand and supply. So on a lighter note, I was speaking at one of the IIMs, and people asked me, one of the students asked me, "Sir, why did you become an entrepreneur?" And I told him, nobody gave me jobs. So I thought, let me form a company and let me give jobs to people. So let me recount my entrepreneurial journey as honestly as I can and as candidly. I think early days were very tough. We did not know how to form a company. No talent of any kind or any description wanted to join us. Friends viewed us as competition. No office fitted our budget. Cash was running out quickly. And for the first time, I began to realize that without this, Indian Army or a Mahindra brand, we were ordinary creatures in the big bad world. So I think one of the first guys to bet on me was a guy called Pawan Desai. He's the co-founder of Midcat. And we had a third partner of a very proven pedigree with whom we would soon disagree on more things than we could agree on. And then we learned the hard way the huge importance of chemistry among founders and teams. So the grace with which we handled the parting of a co-founder, that kind of got us a lot of accolades. And then we still think that that remains a high point. So people told us that they are name it hik nahi hai. Kit Kat is the name. So Kit Kat looks like Kit Kat. I used to tell them, no, if Tata Bata succeeds, so we will also succeed. And it used to be almost like Hamid Ka Chimta. his story. So ironically, some of them now tell us that, yeah, ironically, some of them tell us now that the name is very slick. They say, you mid cat, very, very slick name. And then surely nothing feels like success. So within few months, what happened is that we lost about 45 lakhs in one of the mandates. So I had to surrender my partly paid for house. So we get these houses from Army Welfare Housing Organization. I had paid lots of money, almost, so I had to pay a little bit of penalty, but they returned the money, and that I put back in the company, and we didn't have to fire any of the 22 colleagues. Okay. So COVID was the next moment of truth. So I think God has been kind, and so this pandemic, though we took pay cuts, but I think we were able to give increment to all our colleagues from July onwards, and so we became among the probably less than 1% companies globally to do so. I think colleagues worked very hard, and then we have managed to go through the pandemic. So if you allow me, actually, I can cover what are your learnings in starting a business, and then how do you grow it? So at each stage, the learning
Please go ahead. Please go ahead, sir. I
Sure,
think that's
sir.
going to be
Sure,
very
sir.
useful.
So I think customer has to be central to the vision, and the twin engine of, I said, customers and colleagues drives the growth. So there must be a customer need that you are trying to fulfill. Okay, so great founding team is very, very important, and then you should have a complementary mix of skills. So and leaders must be able to empower, firstly envision, then empower and energize their teams, and you have to set the organizational culture and tone from the top. The culture is very, very important. I said culture eats strategy for breakfast. You must have heard this. When you are venturing into entrepreneurship, have a very powerful idea. Be distinct or extinct, differentiate or die. And entrepreneurs have to think exponentially, not incrementally. So that these are about the founding things. To keep the business running, I think you need teams, people. Teams with correct attitude and mix of skills are important. Hiring is the single most important job, and I drew analogy from the army. Why army is able to. Here you have no UPSC or SSB selecting people. You have that 1 hour interview, and you have to actually decide whether to hire a person or not. And we usually try to have multiple routes of interaction. We try to tell them about ourselves and learn more, and then just actually see. And at times we are not able to hire a person. We also help them to get a job. So we select people, not only those with skills, but those with shared values and great attitude and learnability as well as adaptability. We don't always get it right. I think bad hiring is one of the worst decisions, among the worst mistakes that entrepreneur can do. Cash is king or queen. Cash flows are important. One of my colleagues always used to say, top line is vanity, bottom line is sanity, cash is reality. And we need to segregate good and bad costs, particularly these tough times like during COVID. You need to build agile ecosystems. I think the days are gone when you could grow yourself. So you grow with your partners, and do not waste a crisis. So because during ordinary times, even donkeys look like horses, and it takes only crisis for leaders to emerge. So during Corona times, our job was to keep our customers secure, and so we engaged, supported them, worked hard, kept our teams healthy, safe, de-stressed, and then away from distractions and high morale. So crisis impacts people in different ways. So we had to kind of give a little bit of personalized attention. So those were my learnings from COVID and how to build. To scale up, you firstly need to have inherently a business model which is very scalable. You need enabling technology and platforms. All businesses, if you see, they are moving from pipe model, the old model when you built a great product, then you packaged it well, and then you marketed it, and then you distributed it. So from that model, we are shifting now from Marriott, you are shifting to Airbnb and Oyo, and then from Mercedes, and Volkswagen, you are shifting to Uber and Ola, and then again Netflix, Amazon. So you're moving more and more to platforms, and finance is important. You need a good source of finance, and then ecosystem is important. The founders and the leaders have to have good storytelling skills. Talent is very, very important, and you need talents of various kinds. You need somebody at the top who is visionary, somebody who is integrator, who can put it all together. You need somebody who is good in sales, somebody who is good in delivery, somebody who is great at technology and platforms, somebody who understands finance, and somebody who's good at compliance, and then ecosystem management. Diversity and inclusion is big strength, and I think risk management and understanding not only the financial but also the geopolitical, environmental, socio-economic, and regulatory risks and market peculiarities as well as supply chain. So that's roughly, I think, the three buckets when you start and through the growth and through the scaling up. So that's very briefly I can.
So, sir, when you were sharing, I could completely relate to it that being good and having a job are two different things. And I realized this when I kind of gave up on my job in April. So, the day I left my job and my designation, about 80-90% of my network also was gone. So, I had to actually rebuild everything. And I think the second thing that I definitely kind of stuck to was be distinct or be extinct, right? So, that was, I think, really wonderful. So thank you for sharing all those nuggets, all those pearls of wisdom, and I'm sure the audience would have a lot of takeaways from it. So I'll pass it on to Dr. Rupinder for one of the most interesting parts of the interview, which is the rapid fire. Rupinder, over to you. Rupinder, you're on mute.
Mute.
You're on mute.
Yeah, I think that seems to be the most commonly used word in the virtual world, right? That you are on mute. So thank you for giving me that heads up. But what I was saying was that I think that's like years of wisdom and experience and expertise, very beautifully summarized in what 15 minutes. So I think there's huge amount of takeaway. Probably you would have to read 50 odd books to get that kind of wisdom in 10 minutes. So thank you, Colonel Sam, for doing that. And I'm sure it's going to be very, very helpful for people who are thinking of and who have taken the plunge, you know, and for whom the entrepreneurship bug has already bitten them. So I think there are a huge amount of takeaways there from your personal journey. But yeah, thank you for sharing that. And with that, I am going to now, if you allow me, do a little bit of experimentation here and, ask you some tricky questions. If you are
Rapid
okay with
fire.
that.
You're not going to fire. You're not going to fire.
No, as much as I know and I can, I think I can't beat you. So anyways, I'm not going to fire. I'm just going to take it slow, but I'm going to ask you some very tricky questions if you are good to go with that. Should I?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so I think there's going to be something. The only rule here is that you have to say the first thing that comes to your mind. Okay, you don't have to really spend a lot of time thinking here. Which is your favorite cuisine?
Oh, very simple. Roti, dal, bhujia, and green salad.
Oh, I love that grounding, humble grounding and simplicity in your approach. Okay, this is a good one. Which is the one superhero whom you admire the most? And I know all of us have superheroes whom we admire.
Field Marshal Sam Manekshaw.
Wow. Okay, great. He's also one of my favorite ones. Although he's a real life hero, I will say, I mean, all of us can look up to. Okay, if you could trade lives with anyone, and that could be anyone in the world, for a day, whom would it be?
No one. I've lived a life full of abundance. So
That's so gracious to say that. Okay. If you hypothetically won $1 million, which is the first thing that you would buy? Not that you don't have enough money now, but if you were to win in a lottery, then what is the first thing that you'll buy?
I would pay off all my individual debts, company debts, and and pay in advance for my daughter's fees for overseas education, and the son wants to, and probably sponsor employment-oriented learning programs, particularly focused on women and minorities.
Wow, that's a lot of things. Excellent. So truly spoke like a businessman first, and a father next, and a leader again. So all the three buckets covered. Very well. So, if your life was a movie, what would it be called?
We can win.
Ah, yeah. What a great motto to have. As much as we are physically strong and we are trained to be morally courageous in Forge, there are some things, there are some fears that all of us have somewhere in the dark recesses of our mind. So, what is that one thing that you are most afraid of?
Road accidents in India.
And they account for quite a bit, and they come
150,000.
from
150,000.
150,000.
Yeah, and
That's a
close to half a
huge.
million injuries.
Yeah.
And then we need to act now.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for bringing that statistic in, sir. I think that's very, very useful. Okay, so this is our last two questions for you. You showed us a book, right, which is based on your life and your career and your business story. Is there anything else in the pipeline? Are you
So,
writing or
so, so, so so this book was not written by me. I mean, this book features 10 veteran entrepreneurs, so I happen to be one of them. So, but I'm planning to kind of write one this year that will be more on corporate security, very professional book. And next year, one called CEO to CEO. So that would be, so probably both have been in pipeline for some time. And as and when I get more time, but there is importance about it, but no urgency.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that. The last question to you here before we sign off for a great weekend for all of us is what legacy would you like to leave? And you have to answer that question in just one word.
Can I take two?
Yes.
Better together.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, sir, for that kind of sums up your entire life philosophy of being collaborative in your approach and taking people together as you go. And isn't that a lovely mandate to have for a great leader like you? Thank you so much, sir, for your time and your insights and the experience and wisdom that you shared with all of us today. We go back totally enriched and enthralled with this conversation. And I'll just hand it over to Akhil if he has a few words to add here.
No, I think a big salute to sir, big thank you to sir, a big salute to everyone in the forces, like I always do from the heart. And thank you so much for speaking to us and speaking to the Leaders Story Lounge. Thank you so much, sir.
So big thank you, Dr. Rupinder, and big thank you, Akhil. It's been a huge honor being here, and I learned a lot too. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Have a great weekend ahead. And thank you, everyone who joined us today. Bye bye.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.